Hey everyone, welcome to the New Populist. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Now, with everything going on in Ukraine, there is not a lot of attention on other domestic issues here within the United States. But as I'm sure you're aware, Joe Biden nominated Kentanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. And I wanted to briefly cover this. It's a little anticlimactic. We know she's going to get get confirmed. That's not really in doubt. But I just wanted to call attention to something she said in her confirmation hearing last year that was pretty interesting and sort of gives you an idea of who she is. And one thing I will say, she comes off very well. She has a good demeanor. She's very likable. She is a bright lady. And besides the fact that she's a black female, this was why she was picked by Joe Biden. And as a person of color, even though I don't agree with her judicial philosophy, I would have loved for Joe Biden to have never mentioned that he was picking a black female and just have him say, I'm going to pick somebody that I think is highly qualified, who happens to be a black female, if you can make that distinction. Because when he announced that he was picking her, or picking a person of color and a female, you're almost discounting them from being highly qualified. And that's one of the ways that sometimes liberals are condescending toward black people. Don't single us out. If you want us on your side or you want to pick us for something, some cabinet position, Supreme Court, just pick us. Don't say it's because we're black. That's condescending. But that aside, she is a smart lady. She is qualified. And I know people debate what it means to be qualified. And what people really mean is this person going to vote the way I want them to vote? Because they're all lawyers. They have judicial experience. They're judges. They went to Harvard. So they're all qualified. And it's really just about ideology. So I want to drop that pretense that this is about, is the person qualified? No, it's not. It's about, will this person vote the way I want them to vote? But watching her confirmation hearing with Republicans last year, they treated her pretty nice. They didn't dig in. Of course, this wasn't a Supreme Court nomination. And I would advise them this time around, be nice, because there's nothing to gain from attacking her. She will be confirmed. This is not a position that will change the composition of the Supreme Court. It's a straight swap, liberal for liberal. And Dick Durbin, Democrat senator, not a huge fan of the guy, already suggested that Republicans have in the past been overly aggressive toward black females, and that there was a previous candidate who was receiving death threats. So for optics, there's zero reason for Republicans to take a shot at her and really dig into her. It won't help anything. It has terrible optics, and she will eventually get confirmed anyway. But back to her hearing, I want to play a series of clips that really show her mentality, but also I have to compliment her. She was very clever in how she evaded these questions. And this has to do with systemic racism. Now, in critical race theory, and of course we've all been talking about critical race theory a lot, critical race theory says that a judiciary can't be colorblind because baked into laws is racism, and that a law that is ostensibly neutral can disproportionately impact different communities. And one of the things that Kentanji Brown Jackson talks about, and before she was a judge, she was also an advocate for laws that were discriminatory against black people, but she talks about the difference between crack cocaine and powder cocaine as an example of a law that is disproportionately unfair to people of color. Now, that's debatable. If you've ever met somebody who was high on cocaine, for example, they're energetic, they're obnoxious, they want to dance, they talk too much. versus somebody who's high on crack cocaine who breaks into your car or steals your car radio, and never mind the fact that in the urban areas in the 90s especially, it was the source of so much gang violence and murder. So I don't think they're quite comparable, but I understand the argument they're trying to make that black or crack cocaine is unfair toward black people because it is more prevalent in that community. So from that sense, there is an argument that you can make with critical race theory that some laws are unfair. But what I reject is the overall notion that the system is systemically racist and that it needs to be overthrown, because that is what critical race theory says. It says we challenge the liberal establishment and the liberal system, and it needs to be completely transformed. And that's where I disagree with critical race theory. But let me play these few clips here, and I want you to listen to how she answers these questions.
Now, I believe you've been a judge now for about 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. In your experience as a judge, and prior to that, your experience as a lawyer, would you agree or disagree with someone who said that most racial disparities in criminal convictions and sentencings result from an unconscious racial bias of judges, juries, and other judicial decision makers? Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
Well, Senator, let me just say that as a judge now, it's very important for me not to make personal commitments about things like the question that you asked. That my personal views about anything don't impact my rulings. I am aware of social science research. There is a professor at Harvard, Professor Banerjee, who has done implicit bias work. And there are studies from the commission when I was back at the commission in the policymaking role that talked about and indicated that all of us human beings can have biases that we are unconsciously operating on, and that we have to think about that when we are making decisions, and especially policymakers in the criminal justice system. Now, I'm aware of those studies, but I'm not a social scientist, so.
No, I understand. In 2019, I think in connection with with notes prepared in connection with the same speech, you noted that, quote, observed inconsistencies are largely attributable to factors other than group-based bias by judicial decision makers. Does that ring a bell? Is that something?
Yes, in the context of the critique that I was making, because the article had indicated that they saw, they showed research that there were these demographic disparities, and the article said that they were attributable to bias.
Right.
And so I was trying to give another perspective.
Right. So what are some of the leading factors that is other than unconscious bias that you see having an impact there, that account for some of the disparities that we see in convictions and in sentencing?
Well, one of the things that I was aware of in my time on the Sentencing Commission, and is something that you all have worked on, were the differences in statutory penalties for things like crack and powder. That many
vast disparities between what you get sentenced for with crack versus
correct, and that it was having a demographic effect, because the research and statistics showed that an overwhelming number of defendants who were convicted of crimes involving crack were African American.
Do you think the federal judicial system is systemically racist?
Senator, thank you for that question. I am aware of social science research.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm aware of social science research,
Yes, ma'am.
In particular in my former area of expertise, which is in sentencing, that relates to ways in which policy choices about various aspects of the system can have demographic disparate effects. The most obvious one is one that this body has worked on very hard, and much appreciated the 100-to-1 crack powder disparity. As a judge, I am not looking at systemic effects. I'm not thinking about or focusing on or forming opinions about the research or the circumstances in the abstract like that. I am looking at each case. A person might make a claim that they've been discriminated against in a particular context, and I am applying the law to determine whether or not the law sustains that claim. So I don't really have a frame of reference to answer a question about systemic racism, but I am happy that you are thinking about those things because they're in the province of the policymakers like yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So you can see how she answered these in a very clever way. And I tip my hat to her. She mentions, she goes, I'm aware of social science research. And she's going to say, I'm not ruling based on my personal feelings, my personal biases. I am following the science. I am following the social science research. And that is a clever way to absolve herself of directly having race to impact her decision. So she's defaulting to the social science community who have settled the science here that the system has systemic racism. So in the future, if she rules in a case and she factors in race, it won't be because of her own personal bias. It'll be because she is following the science. So in her confirmation hearing, again, I thought that was the interesting takeaway, how she answered that question. Very, very smart. She's obviously, again, she has a very nice demeanor. She seems like a very nice person. I wish she were a conservative because, again, I like her as a person. I'll put it that way, but I'm going to hate most of her decisions. But I do respect her intellect, and is she qualified for the court? No more, no less than anybody else. So that was my one takeaway from the confirmation hearing for Kentanji Brown Jackson, and she'll be confirmed in a few months, and so we can sort of just put it all behind us and get ready for the next battle for the Supreme Court whenever that opening shows up. Who knows? We'll see. Well, that's it for now. Again, if you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.